Hi there, it's Shalette Davis, coordinator of missions and events here at the Portico campus in downtown Tampa. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we have a bonus conversation between McGray and Gary Mason, who served as our guest pastor last month whenever we were covering Micah 6:8. In this brief conversation, Gary goes deeper into a conversation about the scripture with McGray and really lets us know what it means to do justice today. One thing that really struck me is that Gary said that without faith and spirituality, oftentimes those who are doing justice work will experience exhaustion and anger and even despair. And I think this sounds like a lot like what some of us are experiencing today. Another thing that he said is that as the church, we need to step into the conversation about racial justice and occupy the space, because we, as followers of Jesus Christ, are the most equipped to facilitate this conversation. Now, I serve as a member of the Hyde Park Justice Ministry, and I want to invite you to a virtual event we're hosting this Sunday at 7 p.m. So visit hydeparkumc.org/Tampa Technique and find out more information about how you can join the conversation that we're having about racial justice in Tampa and throughout our country. And now, here's Gary and McGray.
It occurs to me Micah 6:8 is not a multiple choice question. As you were talking, this is an expectation that we go 3 for 3 on these things. And as you were explaining each of these, it seemed to me the importance of balancing all three, that justice, doing justice without kindness or without humility can lead to exhaustion and lead to turning attention to oneself. Kindness and humility without justice is like domesticating Jesus, as you said. In fact, I pulled up a quote as you were talking from Jim Wallace, if I can read this to you, because I think it just resonates so well with what you're saying. Jim Wallace said, "There are two great hungers, a hunger for justice and a hunger for spirituality. Spirituality alone, in a country as affluent as ours, becomes just another commodity. Buy a book, find a guru, go on a retreat, and it becomes very narcissistic. But unless it is tested by justice, justice without being rooted in spirituality can lead to exhaustion, anger, despair, and even violence." And I think you've probably seen evidence of that imbalance of those three qualities in your work.
Yeah. And you know, an old Southern preacher in the United States of another generation once said, just on that pick and choose thing you were mentioning, McGray, he said, salvation is not a cafeteria line.
Right.
Where you take what you want and leave the rest.
Right.
And this verse is exactly the same. I mean, it's finely balanced. And I think just that is so key, and that's what makes it so profound.
Another question that comes to mind, as I and many other leaders in the community help guide the community through these very treacherous waters of racial unrest that we've been fighting for decades, I hear two common sentiments that seem to be at odds with each other. On the one hand, there are folks who encourage us to celebrate how far we've come in overcoming racism. They say, the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, the voting rights, all of that, look how far we've come. And then there are those who say, yes, but look how far we still have to go. And I know that it's a both and, but when I hear two different kinds of people really entrenched in both of those kinds of positions, what is the common ground that they can find with each other there?
I mean, I was wrestling with this, McGray, literally a few hours ago with some ministerial students, pastoral students at Candler School of Theology. And with all the enthusiasm, we went through seminary ourselves when the world seems great, and then you hit the raw reality of life in the streets and find out it's different. And I was trying to suggest to them that, to me, most people in the United States, the vast majority, are good folk. And I was trying to say to students, you need to stop beating yourselves up continually. There are things undoubtedly are wrong. But the more people you can bring into this space to have the conversation, the better. The difficulty in your space at the moment, and actually in my space, McGray, with Brexit at the moment and in the Middle East, to use Jonathan Sachs's phrase, linguistic violence. The language that is being used to deal with this is not an affirming language. So how do we bring these diverse voices into the room and reduce linguistic violence out of the space? I mean, the wonderful quotation I've often quoted, the state of our politics reflects the state of our souls. So this is just not to do with politics. And I remember saying to colleagues who were in Orlando a few years ago, stop confusing the temporal with the eternal. These are eternal issues we are dealing with. Politics is important, but it still is temporal. And I mean, as you've often heard me say, when, the curtain eschatologically finally falls on planet Earth, it's actually not going to be Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Mao Zedong or Boris Johnson or George Bush who's going to be on the stage. All those people are going to realize they were simply two-bit actors in a drama produced by another person called Jesus Christ. And so I would implore the church to realize that some of these things, these justice issues, they are eternal issues because they reflect the heart of God. And that is why they are so, so important for us to wrestle with. I mean, I hear these pessimistic voices. There's no way through it. The gulf is too big in the United States. I say, listen, we signed the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. This is not utopia. But you know what? We've been killing each other for 400 to 500 years. And with the right leadership, and when the stars lined up, we got over the line. I don't believe it is not impossible for that to happen in the United States. So I'd want to be, I hear voices going, oh, it's getting worse. And it may well be. But yet a number of people have said to me, there are people stepping into these spaces for the first time. But you also, McGray, and I've said this, you need to bring in your extremes. And I know people sometimes find that distasteful, but I said, listen, and I said this in relation to people in my space who pursue political violence. If you lock 40 men in a room, listening to their own reassuring voices, it's a recipe for disaster. So how does the church engage with people whose viewpoint they may find pretty distasteful? But if the gospel really changes lives, should that not be the space the church is in, instead of talking continually to people who think exactly just like me?
Yeah. I remember that when we were there with you a few years ago, one of our discussions was on monuments, particularly the Confederate monuments, which were such a debate here. And here we are again, 2020, with many of the protests, some of them centering on the presence of monuments. And I remember what you said a few years ago. You said if you were king for the day, you would declare a 1-year moratorium on the removal of monuments and instead impose some system of dialogue, of openness, because you, just remember what you said, in 1999, the violence in Northern Ireland may have ended with guns, but it continued with the tongue. And what might that look like for us to be able to talk about these things openly?
And McGray, I still unashamedly say that I feel the church is still the best placed institution in the United States to do that. people ask me why. I say, well, can you tell me one other structure in the United States, apart from maybe universities, and perhaps you twin with universities to do this, that has the structure? So I'll take Methodism, because like you, that's where my heart lies. Methodism runs north to south, east to west. It's in every state. It's broken down into districts. It has district superintendents that spill down into churches. I can tell you this, Apple does not have that structure. IBM does not have that structure. Microsoft does not have that structure, spilling into every single nook and cranny of your nation. And with strategic, thoughtful, prophetic thinking, I still believe it is doable. So that is why I think the church needs to step into and inhabit this space. And I say that unashamedly. And that may mean taking a multidisciplinary approach to peace building. So I've been saying to students, for example, Candler now has developed this thing, as you probably know, called the Candler Foundry, which I'm involved in, that's doing community education. So they're looking at a multiplicity of different concepts around that. We have the structures, and let's be honest, McGray, the most wealthiest organization in the United States is the church. Land-wise. No one has the land and the property that the church actually has. So the resources are there. I still think this is achievable. People may say it's false optimism, but if you're in the business of faith, optimism is absolutely premium. I am optimistic, not because of Methodism. I'm optimistic because of this person that Hyde Park United Methodist Church are going to be studying from next Sunday onwards. And that's Jesus Christ. That is why I am optimistic.
Wow. Well, I can't think of a better person to have concluded our journey through the Old Testament. We have read a lot of prophets over the last few months. And if there's any common thread among them, it's that they were able to offer both challenge and comfort, both indictment and hope. And it seems to me that you've offered a very rare balance between the two for us today. So once again, Gary, thank you so much.
And thank you, McGray. And can I just say to your folk as well, I've known McGray a number of years, and I absolutely commend him for the leadership he's given in your space. And I'll say this, he'll shout at me no doubt sometime when we're together in a room. You have an asset in McGray. Protect him, embrace him, love him, and encourage him. And listen, I wish you all well. God willing, we'll be back in the US in spring, hopefully with a vaccine in my arm. And I feel a little bit more secure and better. But until then, bless you and bless your church.